Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I'm your guide, Derek Hayes. Howdy folks, and welcome back to another installment of your favorite paranormal themed podcast, or maybe just podcast in general. As I said, my name is Derek Hayes and I am a collector of spooky stories. And boy, do I have a collection assembled for you here tonight. Tales of strange flying craft, violent spirits, shapeshifters, and a ghost under the bed. But we begin this evening with a visit to a cemetery. Not just any cemetery. One of the most visited in the world. From here in Southern California, please welcome Diane to tonight's program.
Hi, Derek and MAU fans. This is Diane from Eastvale here in the IE. And a couple years ago, this probably is 10 years ago now, for my daughter's birthday, our family went up to LA. We went to Westwood Memorial Cemetery to look at some of the stars' graves, like Marilyn Monroe is buried there. And then we went down to Hollywood Forever, down on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I'm not one that gets creeped out by cemeteries. I like being really respectful, but they don't scare me. And when we were at Hollywood Forever, I swear multiple times when I was walking through graves, it felt like someone was walking right behind me. I could hear swishing in the grass. And I turn around. Nobody's around me. My family is spread out, each looking at a different area, and couldn't shake the feeling. I tried putting my purse in the car, taking my earrings out, different things like that, and I just could not explain it. And none of the rest of my family had any issues. So fast forward a couple years, me and my sister and my mom and a friend went back to Hollywood Forever and walking around, and I don't know, the first time I was there it was late afternoon. Second time I was there it was in the morning. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but nothing. No sound, no feeling like someone's walking right behind me. And I know this isn't like a crazy woo-woo story, but it was something that stuck in my head. It always just bothered me that I couldn't put my finger on what was going on in the first visit to that cemetery. So thank you for listening. Anyone who wants to go there, it's worth a drive to go walk around and be outside for a while. They have big peacocks at that cemetery. Thank you, Derek. Bye.
Thanks, Diane. Hollywood Forever, a cemetery I know quite well. I know it because certain times of the year you can actually catch a film there. Oftentimes they have cast and crew from the movie that they're showing there to present it. So it's quite the experience. They project the film right there on the stark white mausoleum wall. It's pretty cool stuff, actually. And one of the biggest things I miss about living in the center of Los Angeles. Now, Hollywood Forever is famous, if not infamous. A short list of interments read like a red carpet guest list. Cecil B. DeMille, Ed Wood, Judy Garland, Mila Nurmi, Vampira, Dee Dee and Johnny Ramone, Mickey Rooney, Bugsy Siegel, Mel Blanc, Estelle Getty, from the Golden Girls, and most recently Paul Rubens, or Pee Wee Herman, who was laid to rest there earlier this year. Now, I've linked to the full list, and it's quite extensive, though I will admit that many of the players that are buried there are from the earlier generations of the silver screen, names I haven't heard since film school. But it's certainly still worth a look. But the cemetery has a darker side as well, a spookier side. And the very mausoleum that the films are shown on is the center for the resting place's best-known ghost story. But first, we need a little context. Before Heath Ledger, before James Dean, there was another heartthrob that left millions of grieving fans after their untimely, tragic death. 98 years ago, the death of actor Rudolph Valentino shocked the world.
Thousands of movie fans jammed the streets around Campbell's funeral parlor in New York as Rudolph Valentino lies in state. This is the way they remember their favorite, just after he made his greatest film, The Sheep. From 1919, when he started in pictures, up until his death in August 1926, Valentino captured the hearts of millions of moviegoers. His legions of followers wait for a last look at the man they thrilled to on the screen. The Valentino funeral procession moves to St. Malachy's Church. Valentino starred in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Monsieur Beaucaire, The Sheik, The Son of the Sheik, and Blood and Sand. The public, which took his life to their hearts, took his death with a desperate acceptance of the inevitable. Rudolph Valentino begins his last journey.
That was an actual newsreel covering his funeral back in 1926. Courtesy of Film Archives, NYC. So after his New York funeral, Valentino's body was sent back to Los Angeles on a train, where he was later laid to rest, you guessed it, in Hollywood Forever Cemetery, then just known as Hollywood Cemetery. And for the ghostly part of this tale, I pull a dusty tome from my bookshelf, Haunted Southern California by Brian Clune. And page 115 reads, perhaps the most famous spirit at Hollywood Forever may also be the most recent. The Cathedral Mausoleum in the southeast corner of the cemetery is where, in 1926, silent film heartthrob Rudolph Valentino was laid to rest. The year after his passing, and for the next 30 years, Deetra Flame came to his mausoleum to leave one red rose. According to Miss Flame, the reason for her devotion stemmed from the time when she was 14 years old and deathly ill. As a favor to her mother, Valentino would go to the hospital with a single red rose and place it in her hand. He would sit by her bed to comfort her, and once told her, "You're not going to die at all. You're going to live for many more years. If I die before you do, please come and stay by me, because I don't want to be alone." 6 years later, Valentino passed away of complications from surgery to fix an ulcer and appendicitis. Miss Flame never forgot his kindness or her promise. Every year, Miss Flame, always dressed in a black mourning dress, made the pilgrimage to place a rose on the kind man's grave. Deetra Flame passed away on February 23, 1984, at the age of 78. Since that year, sightings of a spectral lady in black have been reported every year on the anniversary of Valentino's passing. The stories are always the same. A woman dressed in the same mourning gown as the one Miss Flame wore will walk up to the crypt, place a single red rose in the vase, gaze kindly at the marker before placing a kiss on her fingers that she transfers to the stone. Then she will slowly walk away, fading from view. Now, I found that story 100 different places, but this telling was one of the most detailed I could find. So I agree with Diane. If you're in Los Angeles and you have the time, go take a stroll, or at the very least, catch a movie there. They play some pretty good ones. And thank you again, Diane, for sending me down a Tinseltown rabbit hole.
We've got this. This is not just help. Cool. Let me check this.
Rest of the season with a dislocated ankle.
Alright, now I have to pick up the pace here a little. It took me way too long to get through. So less talky from me and more scary stories. Like this one from Chris in Virginia.
Hi, Derek. This is Chris from Southwest Virginia. Longtime listener, first-time caller. So I'm sitting in my backyard. It is July 23rd, a little after 9 p.m., and I was just staring off into the sky, into the night sky, and I saw this orange ball of light moving kind of slowly, almost arcing down. And my partner, who was across from me in the hammock, didn't see it. I asked her, "Hey, do you see that?" And she was kind of struggling to get out, and she said, "No, I don't see anything." And it started getting smaller and smaller. And I got really insistent. Like, "Do you see that?" And she was still trying to get out of the hammock and turn around, but she was looking, she's like, I don't see anything. And it got so small that it just disappeared into the sky. And by the time she was out of the hammock, of course, and facing the right way, it was gone. Yeah, really weird. Just wanted to call it in. Love what you do. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Chris, for calling in. Now, coincidentally, I have another call from Virginia that might be reporting the exact same event, but from a much closer vantage point. Please welcome Clay, also from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Hey, Derek, this is Clay from Virginia. I'm a massive fan. I just wanted to call in to report a story that I had from back in 2007 or maybe 2008. This happened towards Laurel Fork, Virginia, a really, really small town, in southwest Virginia, in the middle of central Appalachia. But back in 2007, 2008, I was in high school, and my friend and I, we had decided to stay the night at his house over in Laurel Fork, and there was no drinking, no drugs, no anything. But both of us had worked that day, and we're just playing some pool and everything, and the night was about to end, and he had to call his girlfriend, and so I took the moment to, go around to the side of his house, to his backyard, and I was smoking a cigarette and looking up in the sky, and it was raining earlier, but the rain had subsided, and I was staring off into the sky, and at this area, there was just a major hill that was to the side of his house, and I was looking at the stars and everything, and I looked over into the distance. Coming up over that hill was a massive, massive dome, and it really shocked me. Really, it was kind of like 3 rows of lights. One row on the top was, white light. The one in the middle was red, and then the bottom was white. But it went kind of like a carousel. So from right to left, the lights would, go just like a carousel with illumination going from right to left. And really, I was so shocked that when I saw it, I just stood there in awe and tried to, get my phone out to take a picture or video or something like that, but my phone wasn't working at that time. So put my phone up and just stood there and watched it. But, eventually thought to myself, well, I need to have someone else look at this. So ran down to his basement where we were hanging out and playing pool and get inside, and he had flipped on his electricity on again, or the breaker to his house, so that he could make that phone call and everything like that from his landline from his house. So I guess whatever that was that I had been staring at had interrupted the electricity to his house. And I will say that Laurel Fork, Virginia is near Whitfield, which had somewhat of a flap, I think, in the late 80s. the Whitfield UFO sightings, and also Laurel Ford, Virginia is near one of the biggest deposits of crystal that they've found within Virginia, with all the limestone and everything like that. So a big crystal deposit there as well, and I think over that hill, there was also a major power line. So when I saw that big UFO, I could hear buzzing, and I don't know if it was trying to get some type of charge from that power line or what its intention was, or if it was kind of keying in on me, which is kind of scary to think about. But to be in the middle of absolutely nowhere in Laurel Ford, Virginia, and to see that sighting really sticks to me to this day, and it's probably why I listen to your podcast. So, well, I appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing. I really enjoy the podcast. It makes my day go by really quickly. So thanks, and have a great day.
Thanks, Clay. Yeah, I know the dates don't quite line up there, but maybe this thing comes back on the regular. Now, Virginia has a long history with UFOs, so there's no telling what it was that both of these witnesses saw. But we thank them for sharing their encounters. The best way to get to the bottom of these stories is to get the word out there. Now, folks, if you too have a story you would like me to feature here on the show, give us a holler at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can send me a voice memo to my email at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now, these next few calls have a similar theme. They're each haunting in their own way. Lindsay, welcome to tonight's episode.
Hi, my name is Lindsay. I currently live in Spokane, Washington, but I grew up in Orange, California. And back in 1991, I was in junior high, and I had this friend named Heather who had a slumber party. At the slumber party, Heather was telling us about how her apartment was haunted by this old woman who really liked to watch TV. In specific, she liked to watch Mariah Carey. And Heather was very matter-of-fact about having this ghost. She was not scared of her at all. And so I asked her if the ghost would show herself to us. And Heather said, no way, not now anyway. And so a few days later, Heather and I are hanging out. We go to this candy store called the Pink Lady. And it's one of those old-fashioned candy stores where they just sort of throw all of your candy in one bag. So we got Jawbreakers and those very sour gumballs. And we headed back to Heather's house. We were both latchkey kids. So we're just hanging out at her place in her bedroom, watching TV. I'm sitting with my back up against the wall, and Heather's at the foot of the bed, and she's kind of leaning on her side, and we just dumped all of our candy out on the bed, and we're eating it. Heather turns to me and she's like, hey, did you move my candy? And I said, no. And she goes, oh, okay, watch this. And so she leads me out of the room. We shut the door behind us. We go back in, and the candy is scattered across the bed, and there's a few pieces that are very wet. So we do this a few more times. We leave the room, shut the door, go back in. The candy's all lined up. Leave the room, come back in. It's stacked up in a little pyramid. I mean, this was just incredible. And so I'm thinking, no way. I'm looking around. I'm looking in the closet. I'm looking under the bed. I'm thinking that there's got to be someone else there, but there really wasn't. And so I figured, since she's able to move candy like this, maybe she can write us a message. And so I take a piece of paper and a pencil, and I wrote, show yourself to us. Again, made sure I was the last person out of the room, shut the door, gave her a minute, and then when we went back in, no was scribbled across the paper. So that is the most concrete thing I have ever seen with my own eyes. I've seen other things growing up that I kind of question now. I wonder if I really saw what I thought I did. Interestingly, some of the stories on your show remind me of the details. Like I saw shadow figures once where they looked very sort of jagged and they moved jerkily. And I remember seeing that, but I kind of forgot about it until I heard other people's stories, and I was like, whoa. So anyway, that's my story. Thanks a bunch. Bye.
Thanks, Lindsay. A ghost that loves candy. And Mariah Carey. It's pretty amazing. And very apropos for this time of year. And the sassiness from this ghost The scribbled note that said no when asked to present itself. I love the moxie. And I love that you shared this story with us, Lindsay. So thank you again for calling in. Now I need to take a quick break, but when I come back, 2 more ghostly tales, each as unsettling as the last. I'll be right back. Okay, as promised, here is ghostly tale number 2 of 3 for your listening discomfort. Josh from Missouri. Welcome to tonight's program.
Hello, Derek. This is Josh from Missouri. I'm a longtime listener, big fan, watched you on Paranormal Caught on Camera, and really love the podcast. Been listening to you for a long time, and I finally had an experience the other night, just 2 nights ago, that I most definitely had to call and share with you. It happened in Oklahoma City. I'm working out of town, and we're staying in a hotel. It's fairly new. If you look at it on Google Maps, you'll see that the picture shows that it's still under construction, so it's fairly new. So the other night, the first night we were here, I was laying on my left side of the bed. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was dead asleep. The room was completely dark. The blinds here are really good, and they just completely blacked out the room. Anyway, I'm laying on my left side, facing the window, and my left arm is like draped over to the other side of the bed. And I remember just felt like I was getting pulled, like something was on the other side of the bed pulling me. And it woke me up and freaked me out. I woke up screaming at the top of my lungs. What the cursing? I screamed so loud, and I was terrified. It felt like something was trying to drag me off the bed. And then when I woke up screaming, it let go. And when it did, if it was even real, I pulled my arm back so fast, my pinky nail got caught on the, not really caught, but as it was dragging across the sheets as I was pulling my arm in, pulled my pinky nail out so far it was bleeding pretty bad. And I feel like there's no way I could do that without something holding my hand so I could pull it back, and then it let go, and that much force would do it. It was terrifying. I was so scared. Nothing's ever happened to me like that before. I've never had a paranormal experience. However, I've been wanting one, I'm totally into this. But I asked the hotel staff if there was any deaths here, and they're not aware of anything. I did a Google search. I couldn't find anything. After it happened, I sat there for a minute, just in complete shock, and I tried to think, was I having a dream? Of course, I couldn't remember any dream at all. I don't know if there was something in here trying to pull me, if it was a dream. The next night, nothing happened. But that's my story. It was so scary. And I thank you for giving me a place to share this. Some people think I'm crazy. Some people believe me. We'll see what everybody thinks. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Josh. So what do you think, dear listener? A wild, vivid, realistic nightmare? Or was Josh manhandled by an invisible man? I will let you be the judge. But thank you, Josh, for calling in. Now, folks, real quick, don't forget about the Monsters Among Us store. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab for access to dozens of gnarly products made specifically for you, a Monsters Among Us listener. So again, that's monstersamonguspodcast.com and click that shop tab. Now for that third installment of this trio of haunting tales, a blood-curdling submission from the East Coast. please join me in welcoming Hunter from South Carolina.
What's going on, Derek? This is Hunter from Spartanburg, South Carolina. I've been listening to your podcast now for about 2.5, almost 3 weeks. Found you guys from Unexplained Encounters. Love the show. I just wanted to call in and give you an experience that I had. I have a long list of them, but this is the first experience, or the first one I can remember. I was about 7 or 8, and to give you some context, my dad is disabled. He's been disabled since I was about 3 years old, so we spend a lot of time together. We're really close. Well, we were at home, and it was probably about 12 o'clock p.m., middle of the day, pretty beautiful day outside. We got bored, so my dad was like, okay, I'm going to cook us some lunch. If you want to go find something that we can play, like a board game or play with some toys or Nerf guns or something along those lines, go for it. So while he was in the kitchen cooking lunch, I decided that I wanted to play a game of Monopoly. We had 3 or 4 board games up under the bed in the master bedroom, in my mom and dad's bedroom, and I decided that I wanted to play Monopoly. So I walked from the kitchen down the hall, open my dad's door, and go to bend down to get up under the bed to grab the box of Monopoly and pull it out and go back into the living room. Well, as I walk in, everything seems fine. I'm not thinking anything about it. You know, I'm a kid. I'm just happy-go-lucky that me and my dad are going to play this game. And I bend down and bend over to get up under the bed, and as I go up under the bed to get it, this is hard to explain. There was a girl. There was a girl up under the bed. It wasn't like she was transparent. It wasn't like it was see-through, or it wasn't like a stereotypical white apparition. This was a girl. She looked as real as I do sitting here talking to you. She had what seemed to be it wasn't like a nightgown, but it was like like an evening dress, I guess. It was white, and it had like black, well, I don't want to say flowers because I don't remember exactly. I didn't pay that much attention to the clothes that she was wearing, but I know it was a white gown and it had some kind of black pattern on it. She had long dark hair. She was the palest pale I have ever seen in my life. And she was facing towards me, laying down up under the bed. She had her head turned towards me. So as I see this, I start to freak out, obviously, because there's some woman or some girl in my house, and I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child. So that couldn't have been a sister, a friend. There was nobody else in the house. She's looking at me, and she never says anything. She never moved towards me. All she did was smile at me. But the way that she smiled at me was, I think, not only of just seeing her, but it was like something was wrong about it. It freaked me out. I mean, I absolutely just lost it. And I run as hard as and fast as I could back to my dad, screaming, crying, upset. Dad, there's a little girl, and she's up under the bed. You need to go look. I know it happened. I'm not crazy. Please believe me. I was extremely upset. My dad goes and looks, and there's nothing there. Obviously, I didn't know what else to say, and my dad was like, son, you just imagined it. It wasn't real. He didn't believe me. And that was the start of a long process of my childhood home, seeing things and hearing things. And I'll call back in with some more stories of seeing that girl or whatever it was. I don't believe that it's actually a little girl. I don't think a little girl would try and purposely scare you or torment you the way that this thing did to me until I left that house, until I got old enough to move out. And I just know that from the time that I seen that thing till I was about 19 or 20, even when I would go back home and visit or stay for the weekend, I would see things, I would hear things, and it always freaked me out. I'm 28 now, and even to go back to my dad's house now, I still get the feeling that stuff's there. I feel like it's a negative feeling. It's a negative energy. I don't know what it really is, but to wrap it up, I wanted to say that as I got older, when I was about 12 or 13, my dad finally confessed and said that he believed me. He had had some experiences in that house and seen some things, and that he didn't want to scare me even worse when I was a kid. But anyway, I wanted to tell you guys I love the podcast. I love what you guys have done with it, what you guys are doing. So thank you. And also thank you to Sarah for the work that she does and everybody else at the Monsters Among Us team. I hope y'all have a good one, and y'all stay safe and stay spooky. Later.
Thanks, Hunter. Now, I'm not gonna lie. At first, I thought Hunter uncovered a serial killer in his family, finding one of the victims under his parents' bed. That is, until the girl smiled. What an eerie image to imagine. And yes, a huge thank you to Sarah, the unsung hero here at Monsters Among Us Studios. Not only is Sarah my wife of 5 years, and partner for like a dozen, she is the reason these calls are fresh each and every week. Her hard work selling, marketing, and growing the show, and keeping things rolling on the business end, is not only the reason I'm able to consistently release content, but also the reason we have fresh calls to share each and every week. She's out there finding those new listeners. So I appreciate the kind words on her behalf, Hunter. And of course, we thank her for her diligent work. And since her hard work is topic du jour, you can make her job a little bit easier by sharing the show yourself with anyone you think might like to listen. 'Tis the season for spookiness, so this is the perfect time of year to share the gospel of Monsters Among Us. Please and thank you. Now it's time for yet another ad break, but when I return, I have something kind of special I'd like to share with you. Now, we already shared 3 gnarly ghost stories. Now I have 3 sinister shapeshifter stories lined up and ready to ruin your tranquil evening. But first, a message from tonight's sponsors.
By the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
The best show on your radio is the afternoon.
An associate editor.
Let's cast with Jen and
Son.
Because we got to look at it from this angle, right?
And by the way, we get a lot of complaints about the programmatic ads that we share here on the program. And a programmatic is basically any ad that's not read in my voice. So a McDonald's commercial or a car commercial or something like that. Well, just know that we do not pick those ads. Those are selected by your podcast listening platform, and they're catered to your web history, or algorithms, or whatever that is. We have 0 say in that. Although we have asked to be excluded from certain controversial subjects, such as politics. So if you hear one of those ads, it somehow snuck through, and it's nothing to do with us. Now remember, you can get the show entirely ad-free for only $1 a month by visiting us over on Patreon. Okay, on to tonight's triple feature. Now, I love a good shapeshifter story. And given it's about a week or so before the greatest holiday of them all, I figured now would be a great time to share a few that I've had in my back pocket. So to kick us off, we begin in parts unknown. Noah, tell us what you saw.
Hi, my name is Noah Sutherland, and I'm calling basically to talk about a phenomena or event, I guess. I don't really know what to call it. So anyway, when I was like 17 years old, I was living in Lowell, Michigan. And me and my friend were at a park called Creekside Park. It was after dark. It was really, really late at night. I think it was like 3 a.m. The cops were out, and they ended up pulling by, and they had their searchlight out, so me and my friend ran away. When we ended up coming back around the corner, and right next to the middle school, there are railroad tracks that are right between the trees. So we decided we were going to walk down there. And as we're walking through there, we're meeting up with friends who are also at the park who took a different route. And we're walking and we're talking about stuff, and I had recently hurt my hip, just medical condition-wise. Anyway, we're walking, we get probably about maybe 500 to 700 yards down the railroad tracks, and then we heard some weird noise, and we're looking around, and it sounds like something's running after us, and something ran right in front of us. It was really weird. It had like a human head with a white body. It was completely hairless, but it was running on all fours, and it was like, you know the story of the rake? It looked kind of like the description of that, but more like a Native American folklore kind of thing, like the Wendigo, or not really a skinwalker, because skinwalkers are supposed to be human, but this did not look human. This looked malformed and misshapen. And it didn't attack us or anything, and it only ran right in front of us. But it left a lasting memory on me and my friend for a very, very long time. And me and this friend, he can attest to this story too, and I can talk to him about calling in and saying his side of things. But either way you cut it, I just wanted to throw this out there, and I know that you're actually pretty good at explaining away these kind of phenomenon, so I figured I'd call and talk about this and see if there's a way you could explain away this, because I personally prefer to make sure that I have a logical explanation behind what I saw. Thank you, and have a nice day, and keep up the good work. You're great at doing this podcast, and I really appreciate it. You make people's lives a little bit better piece by piece. Thank you. Have a great one. Bye.
Thanks, Noah. I like that one. And it sounds eerily familiar to me. And after some time, I finally figured out why. Back on season 17, episode 7, I shared a call by Andrew from Connecticut, whom experienced something almost exactly like this. Now, Andrew didn't actually get a look at whatever rushed him and his friend, but I still couldn't help but see the parallels. Now, as a refresher, I pulled the relevant part of Andrew's story, and here it is now.
Anyway, I'm about halfway down the driveway when I hear a rustling opposite side of the yard, about 100 feet to my right. I thought it was my friend trying to scare me, and I laugh and say, "Hey, is that you over there? I can hear you." And to my surprise, I hear him say, "Dude, is that you?" from about 15 feet in front of me. So like all the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And then I hear this thing, whatever it is, burst from the bushes and run right towards us. Bewildered, my friend and I are like, what the hell is going on? And when something crosses right between us, it crashed through the woods to our left, and then it disappeared. Everything happened in the matter of a few seconds. It was so quick.
I don't know. Maybe these two encounters aren't connected. Maybe they are. Per usual, I'll let you be the judge. But before you slip on your robes and grab your gavel, I have another shape-shifting entry to share with you. And this one is all kinds of unsettling. But before we share it, again, I need to reference a past call. Back on season 16, episode 14, a caller from Wisconsin named Kate called in to report that while she was on a walk along the river in Eau Claire, she witnessed an old lady with a large suitcase morph or transform into some sort of moose-like creature. The animal then seemed to chase Kate a bit before crashing through a cup of trees. Well, with that story in mind, meet me back in Wisconsin, because I have another Heartstopper to share with you. Please join me in welcoming Brenda to the show.
Hi, Derek. Love your show. I finally decided to call in with my story. My name is Brenda, and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One day back in 2005, my boyfriend, then husband now, we were by the beach, by the Lake Michigan. It was July of 2005. It was almost dusk, and the sun was setting for sure. And I was 17 and he was 18. So we were just there by the beach, and I remember we were skipping rocks, or he was showing me how to skip rocks. But there was people around us before the sunset. And one of the persons that we noticed was a guy who was walking his golden retriever, and he was throwing the ball into the lake, and the dog will go in and then out the lake. And there was families around and everything. So then, because the sun was setting, people were leaving, and we were like almost the last ones there. But right when I was like bending down to get my sandals, we both turned to our right, and I want to say 20 feet away from us, something was coming out of the water, and there was nobody around anymore. So something was coming out of the water, and it kind of looked like the golden retriever from earlier. I was thinking, where's the owner? So I noticed my husband was looking that way, and we were both like, okay, where's the owner? But the thing is, too, that when it came out the water, to me, it looked like the dog. And when it was coming out the water, what caught our attention more than anything was that it started growing, like wide, like fat. I've never seen a bear in person, but to me, it looked like it was getting the size of a bear. And it was like coming out of the water in four. And then it got behind a log that was on the beach, like just halfway there. And it got behind it, and it was still on fours. When it was halfway behind the log, it stood up. And then when it stood up, all of a sudden it was skinny, like thin. And then not only did it stand up, but it kind of like stood up, and it kind of looked like it was like in an elevator because it was getting longer. And the only thing I could think of was, this thing is tall and now skinny. That's when I started freaking out, and I noticed my husband was freaking out too. And I'm pretty sure by then, when it stood up, it noticed we were there. And when it stood up, it started crawling further up to where there was like a bunch of trees, because it's like the lake, the beach, there's like a sidewalk at the end of the beach, and then they start like a bunch of trees, because you need to go up a hill to park up there, basically. So then we started getting scared, and on the way to the beach, we had to go down these long steps, and the thing went into those trees that are surrounding the stairs to go up to our car. So we both said, hell no, we're not going up the stairs. So then we started walking to the opposite side of where this thing was. But when this thing went into the trees, it started like running back and forth, back and forward, left and right, like super fast, like super fast. And it was going our direction. So basically, as we were walking, it was in the trees walking beside us, but we were like further away. And this thing was moving back and forth, left and right, like super fast. And we never saw its face. It didn't make a sound from the time it came out the lake. It made no sound because it was between the trees. It wasn't making like stepping noise or anything. But then it kept following us all the way. The whole time we were walking, we were basically not talking because we knew that thing was there. And I remember my husband picked up a rock just in case the thing came out of the trees. When he picked up the rock, I remember I'm like, are you going to throw it? And he said, no, just in case. but he never threw the rock. We just kept walking and walking because this thing, even though it was following us, we couldn't see it like 100%. It was like shifting different directions, but at the same time, it was following us. And maybe to put a picture in your head, have you ever seen The Flash, the TV show? And when the Flash vibrates so that they don't know who he is, that's how it looked. And that's how it was moving, like super fast. And we could see it too. But we couldn't see like the eyes, the face, and it was dark too because the sun had set. And by the time the rocks ended, from the beach to the rocks, there was a sidewalk, so we just kept walking and walking until you land on a park. When you get to the park, that's where you start seeing houses at the other end of the beach. So then the trees ended maybe a little bit before the sidewalk started. So then that's when we just kind of looked back to see if it kept coming. But we had to go around the park and all the way back. Everything we walked the opposite way, we had to go around to go look for my husband's car where he had parked it. But the strange thing is that there was houses behind that beach, and this thing was moving so fast. We joke about it now because it happened when we were younger, but it was scary. The creepiest thing for me was that it came out the water, but my husband says that the creepiest part for him was how fast it was moving. And I decided to call because I heard Kate's story from Eau Claire, from that old lady that turned into a moose. The weird thing is that I think whatever came out the water was shape-shifting. Thank you, Derek. Goodbye.
That's what I'm talking about, Brenda. Thank you for calling in. There are lots of parallels between Brenda's entry and Kate's from a couple of seasons back. Both encounters occurred near water. Both witnesses saw something seemingly transform into something else, something much larger than the original shape. And both creatures rushed into the trees and seemed to chase or harass the witness. And both encounters took place in the state of Wisconsin. Per usual, I had Delaney go through the subject with a fine-toothed comb. We both spent considerable time trying to find some existing lore, recent sightings, or native legends that could explain not only what Brenda saw, but what Kate saw as well. But just like with Kate's entry, we didn't find much of anything. And while it's frustrating that we cannot make those connections, it is a testament to the uniqueness of these stories. You don't hear stuff like this anywhere else. Not at this frequency, at least. And we appreciate all those callers that trust us to present those stories. Anyway, that's my way of saying that we found nothing with this story. But we're still looking, and we're open to any information that anyone listening might have. The number is 888-608-NIGHT, and the email is monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So I'll just leave the story there. But I do just want to thank Brenda once more for trusting us with her tale. Now, folks, like I said, I have one more shape-shifting entry to share with you this evening. But first, I have to pretend to end the show. It's a little thing I've been doing for years. A secret story at the end of the program. Don't miss out. Stick around until the very end. Otherwise, you will. Now, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Follow us on our social media accounts. Give us a like and follow at YouTube. And leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. We would appreciate all of that. Don't forget you can check out the show at 11 p.m. Eastern on the UNX digital radio network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Code.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Now don't go anywhere, I'll be right back after this outro and our final ad break of the evening. I'll see you on the other side.
And video games finally back. A new season means new ways.
In New York, call 877-8-HOPE.
I'm happy to see you made it past the gauntlet, and you shall be rewarded with yet another spine-tingling, shape-shifting story, a terrifying narrative from here in Southern California. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Derek. My name's Mike. I live in Los Angeles. I just heard one of your latest episodes where a guy was talking about train hopping, and it just made me think of some of the crazy things that happen by railroad tracks. When I was younger, I used to live in a neighborhood right near the railroad tracks, and I remember at night when the train would pass, it used to always scare me to hear the blaring of the horn that the train had. But one thing that used to happen to me at night was when I was a child, I had a bedroom by the window, and it happened pretty often that I would hear horses outside my window. Now, where I lived in San Fernando is right next to a Fillmore, where they have a lot of ranches and stuff like that, and sometimes during the day you'd see people, riding their horses down the side of the street. I actually had a friend who used to get picked up at school by his father on horseback. Well, would I say that to say that sometimes late at night I would hear the horses, passing by my window. I'd hear the sounds of their hooves on the pavement. And one night I decided to get out of my bed and go to the window and look outside. And what I saw was through the chain link fence, so through the front yard, through the chain link fence, there was a woman. And what was odd about her was that she was so tall and looked like she had a veil on or something. She had something over her head from what I can remember. I'm not sure what it was. It looked like some type of cloth over her face or something like that, but I could still see the light shimmer through it, so it looked like it might have been kind of see-through or something. That's the only thing I could relate it to, as like a veil or something. And she had this big hair, and when she was passing by, I noticed that the reason that I got up in the first place was because I heard the horse's hooves. And looking down at her feet, I noticed that her weird walk was due to her having what looked like hooves. It scared the life out of me. I remember that night I started screaming. My dad came into the room and I told him what was happening. He turned on the light and he looked outside and he brushed it off due to my age. And I was so terrified to hear horses pass by my window after that. And since then, I now live in another part of Los Angeles, but nowhere near mountains or anywhere where they would have horses. And still at night, when I hear hooves outside of my house, I wonder if she's following me or if it's just some guy walking down the street with his horse. Either way, every time I hear the noise of it, terrifies me to this day. But there's a difference now. I never have the courage to look out the window anymore. Just a quick story. Thought I'd call in and give it to you. It popped in my mind once I heard that last episode. I love the podcast, Derek. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. A woman with hooves instead of feet. Surely, that's a shapeshifter as well, right? Well, the fact that this took place on the outskirts of Los Angeles is not lost on me. One of the great melting pots of the world. You can find a representative of nearly any culture somewhere in LA. So I can't help but wonder if this may have been something brought in by one of those cultures. After all, legends detailing something very similar exist in a number of places around the world. For example, La Diablesse. La Diablesse is a character in Caribbean folklore. She was an enslaved African woman who made a deal with the devil to give her soul to him, becoming a demigod in exchange for eternal beauty. Her hideous face is hidden by a large brimmed hat, and her long dress hides the fact that one leg ends in a cow hoof. She walks with one foot on the road and her cow hoof on the grass on the side of the road. Then there is La Parasola from South American folklore. She can metamorphosize into different shapes and appearances. She commonly takes on the appearance of a beautiful woman to lure in men to their death, notably loggers and hunters. La Parasola's most notable feature, from which her name derives, is her one leg, which terminates in a cleaved, bovine-like hoof, and she moves in a plantigrade fashion, or on the tips of her feet. Then there's the Glastig, a malevolent type of ghost from Scottish mythology. She may appear as a beautiful woman or half-woman and half-goat, similar to a faun or satyr, or in the shape of a goat completely. The lower goat half of her hybrid form is usually disguised by a long flowing green robe or dress, and the woman often appears gray, with long yellow hair. And finally, you have the Ixtaba. The Ixtaba is part of the Yucatec Maya folk tradition, described as a beautiful woman with long black hair who wears a flowing white frock. She looks like a human until you notice her feet. She floats slightly off the ground, and one foot is that of a bird, and the other is that of a hoof. The Ixtaba appears mostly to men at night and leads them into the forest, seduces them, and then murders them. Now, I'm no detective, but I bet each of those could be considered a suspect. And props to our lead and only researcher, Delaney Bowers, for digging up these stories. And thank you again, Mike, for calling in. Alright, everyone, meet me in the Beyond, our world-famous after show where we share more spooky stories. If you'd like to join us, there are 2 different ways you can do so. You can try each of them for free. First, head on over to patreon.com and search for Monsters Among Us podcast. Then join the $5 level. Or, from the Monsters Among Us Apple page, you can subscribe directly from there. Either method gives you instant access to countless hours of bonus content, from all the way back to season 4 or 5, I think. And it gets you access to the remainder of this episode, of which you do not want to miss. Because it's in the Beyond that we hear intriguing entries like this one that was sent in anonymously.
Hi there. My name is not important, but I think you might be interested in my story. So ever since I was little, I've seen ghosts. It's actually a bit of a family gift, and it's come down through my dad and my grandfather before him. I've leaned into it more than just about anybody in my family, to the point where today I get called out to spooky residences to diagnose properties as haunted or not haunted. And oftentimes that comes with certain tasks on my behalf, whether it be cleansing a property, blessing a property, or just saying, nah, you don't really need anything done here.
A lot of the times when I go on these investigations, I pay attention to where phone lines are, what direction the house is facing, whether there's any optical illusions created by windows or noises on the street. Well, the story today is about a woman's house that I visited in a pretty historic town in Maryland. The reason that I had been called out to the house in the first place, besides the pure amount of activity that the woman was experiencing, was because she had woken up several times in the last few weeks seeing a gigantic figure hulking over